Welcome back to Profit Cast. For those of you listening on the podcast, if you're in the Facebook group, you just heard my super weird introduction. And we're working out some new tech stuff. So got my camera DSLR hooked up to OBS so I can actually record this. And we can talk about something that's super important today that I think is coming up a lot. And been seeing it with clients, been seeing it with people that we're talking to who are interested in our CEO Finance Academy. And it's this topic of shame around our finances. And it's something that I think more people deal with than we realize. I think in the internet world, you look in on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram, wherever it might be, and we just see so many people who are posting these incredible business wins. And oftentimes it's revenue numbers, it's how many new clients they got. And I can just say, having looked inside a lot of those businesses as a business coach and then as marketing and sales coach, and now helping with finances, revenue can be deceiving. And it's often a way that we can mask what's actually going on in our business from a public standpoint, right? We present our business in a way that's doing X amount of revenue. People assume, wow, you must be crushing it. And the reality is you might not be. And I would just say that a lot of businesses that we work with aren't actually quote unquote crushing it as much as we might think they are, or the way that they're presented online. And not to say that hitting a certain revenue goal isn't a way of crushing it, but I think at the end of the day, when we talk with business owners, the number one thing they want is they want to be able to take home as much as they need, and even more, so they can start investing in their future, helping with charitable causes, giving, being able to buy back time to be able to go do things that they love. And you can't do that if you don't have money that you're keeping and able to pay yourself. And I want to talk about this. I want to talk about shame when it comes to our business finances, shame when it comes to our personal finances. I'm by no means perfect at this. Alex and I have had our struggles in the past of really going through this. I remember the first year I ran my own personal consulting business, I broke even. I think I made $45K in revenue, and this was a side business, but I think I spent like 43. I was testing advertising. I was testing new softwares and doing all this stuff. And I remember people being like, wow, your consulting business just for the side is like, the equivalent of a teacher's salary. And I was like, yeah, that sounds really great. And if they could have seen my bank account though, for that, I had that revenue, but all of it went out the window in expenses. And I was lucky in that way, and then I didn't owe anything for taxes because I didn't really make a profit. But I was deep down kind of ashamed. Like, I really felt terrible that I had worked so hard and had talked publicly about how we were getting wins in our business, or in my consulting business, but I had nothing to show for it in terms of finances. If you had seen that P&L sheet, right, you would have seen that there was $1,000 of profit at the end of the year. And I remember having these feelings of, I'm a fraud. I had these feelings of, I'm just not a money person. I'm never going to figure this out. I'm not good with money. I'll just make more next year, and surely my expenses will stay the same. And that was my mindset. And I think a lot of us have that mindset early on. We're entrepreneurs. We're go-getters. Many of us are the doers. We're not the pause and think type. We're, hey, what's the next thing we have to do? What's the next project? And I think there's an addiction to that. I can speak for myself, where I just want to go to the next thing, and I want to test new things, and I want to hit new goals. And I never want to really stop and analyze and focus on stuff. And luckily, Alex, who's in this group, my business partner, he has trained himself to be much better at that. I think he was born with a little more of that by nature, but he's certainly trained himself to be very, diligent when it comes to tracking, taking time to pause, analyze what's going on in our business, and be able to make new decisions, better decisions based off of what we're seeing. I think when it comes to shame, it yields itself in a few ways that become very counterintuitive. One is we don't want to seek help. There's this sense of shame. And I know this is true because we've spoken with, probably at least 20 people every single month who are interested in wanting to work with us. And we hear that they're nervous to get on a call with us because they're afraid that they'll be judged for how their business finances actually are. And I get that. It's sort of like admitting you have a problem when you don't really want anyone to know you have a problem, which really doesn't help us because it doesn't help us get reality, doesn't help us create the reality that exists. And the only way we're going to get through it is by addressing that it exists and the degree to which it exists. Very difficult to face. Something that scares a lot of us. It comes with a lot of identity issues of, if I can't figure this out, then I expose myself. Should I have a business? Should I be in business? What if anybody finds out? I'd rather just eat it, keep it inside, bury it within myself, and nobody else has to know. I think, however, for those of us who are in relationships, whether you're married, have a partner, you're buying things together, they know. Right? They see it, unless you're taking actions to mask it through credit or something like that. They know and they feel it. And so there's only so much that you can hide. But I think from this public perception, we feel like we have to maintain a level of perception of how good our business is and how it's doing. And so I think it leads to this fear of facing reality. Like, we know it exists. It's not an awareness problem. Most people are aware that they have a business finance problem. They don't want to face the reality of it, is one thing. The second thing is, I think by not talking about it, we make it normal to assume that everybody must have it figured out. And this is where I can just tell you, luckily, we've had insight into so many other businesses doing business coaching. We started out doing marketing and sales coaching. And as a part of that, we would ask people, what are your sales numbers? What's your marketing budget? And we just found that most people didn't know, or they had an idea, didn't have much of a budget. And the reason was because they hadn't been saving. They hadn't been building business reserves. They were hoarding money in their checking account because they hadn't properly saved for taxes every month. And so there's this fear of like, I should hold on to it. And by not being able to seek help or reach out for it, it just creates this continued perception that I must be alone. I must be the only person who doesn't have this figured out. And what's crazy to me is I looked at the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know what year it was published, so I'll try to put the link to it below. But the National Chamber of Commerce organization, based on a survey that they did, found that only 2 out of 5 businesses in the U.S. are turning a profit. 2 out of 5 businesses are turning a profit. So the fact to think that we are ashamed that we don't have it figured out, the statistics show most of us don't have it figured out. And I know that's not going to remove the shame right now and say, oh, great, just like everybody else. I think it should help us say we should be talking about it more and being open about it and finding ways to help one another if 3 out of 5 businesses aren't turning a profit. And I realize there are some caveats to that. There are new business models like SaaS where you get venture capital money and you don't turn a profit for years. And the whole goal is to exit and sell and get acquired by another company. But I think for most small business owners, you're hoping to turn a profit. Like, in many of us, we need to turn a profit to be able to pay our bills, pay our employees, to live a lifestyle that we would like to have. And I'll share the link in the comments of this thread, or if you're listening on the podcast, I'll put it in the show notes just so you can read it for yourself. And maybe you can challenge me and say, well, it's ridiculous. But I think it goes to show that the more that we don't talk about it, the more that the shame builds. And I've felt this in other aspects of my own life, having dealt with depression and massively exhausting anxiety, spells of anxiety, to the point where it created almost agoraphobia, and it definitely created agoraphobia where I didn't want to go anywhere. The more that I avoided talking about it and feeling that shame, it only escalated and escalated and escalated. And so I really do believe that if nothing else, this isn't a call to work with Alex and I, if nothing else, I really hope we can provide a space where it's okay to talk about the realities of what's happening inside of most businesses with their finances. Because at the end of the day, you do have an alternative. You could go back and get a job. As business owners, I think most of us, if not all of us, would hate that. We want to stay where we're at. We want to make this work. And for it to work, we have to have reasonable targets. We have to set targets. And we have to set a reasonable path to achieve those targets. And what I find is with the shame is that we just haven't been operating under a framework that allows us to reach those targets. And many of the times the target is the wrong thing. It's a revenue number rather than a profit number. And then when we don't hit that revenue number, or even worse, when we do hit that revenue number, but your take-home pay doesn't change, we just did all that extra work. I'm implying that it would take more work to hit increased revenue. There's a sense of massive shame, disappointment, shame, guilt. Hey, our business is better, but then we go home to talk to our partner or family. And that's amazing. Dad, mom, what does that mean for our lives? Technically nothing. Nothing changed. I didn't take any more money home with us. I didn't even get more time back. So I think we need to talk through the shame that comes with our business finances. And I think one thing that's really helped me has been having Alex, my business partner, who he has a family, he's married, has 3 beautiful daughters, and his stakes are much higher than mine. I'm single, in a relationship, but we don't share bank accounts or anything like that. And his stakes are much higher. And so he had to face that reality much quicker. And I remember the period of time where I could see his guilt, shame, fear way through the roof. And I'm very fortunate to have had that because I've been dealing with my own money beliefs and shame throughout that period of time. He was feeling that, and he started the conversation. And if it weren't for Alex, I think I'd probably still be running my other side consulting business at a loss or break even at best. And now, I'm turning over a 40% plus profit on that consulting business. So I'm really grateful for that. And I wouldn't have been able to, that wouldn't be possible if I hadn't started to face the reality of what I was dealing with and accepting that I needed to get help and talk through it. First, it was listening to people who were talking about it, which is what I hope this podcast helps with, and these Facebook Lives. I hope that's what they help with, to talk about the reality of business. And we glorify entrepreneurship, but it takes a massive toll, especially when you're dealing in feelings of guilt, shame, worry. I see it every single day with the clients that we work with. Where am I going to get my next client? How am I going to keep more of what I'm making? How do I leverage this, growth that's happening? How do I leverage it into more better opportunities? And so listening to all those things, people talking about that, Alex, my business partner, starting that conversation for us was massive. And then second was, who can tactically help me work through this? And I needed a partner. I needed a coach. And, that's really where we've come in now, is acting as financial coaches. So I guess I want to end this with, if you're feeling any of these emotions of shame, guilt, worry, anxiety, that I hope you spend some time on our podcast or in our group, or if you find somebody else who's talking about money, about finances, about being disciplined, about taking accountability, taking ownership of your situation. For me, that was one of the first steps. And then the second step that has really helped is finding a group of people and a coach who's held me disciplined, who's helped me stay disciplined and has held me accountable to facing that reality each week, because my instinct is to run away from it. And I'd almost rather live in shame that nobody knows about than face the reality and have to deal with it. So that's what's helped me. And I just want you to know that if you're listening to this, that you're probably, odds are statistically, you're in the majority where your business isn't turning the kind of profit that you would like it to be. And if you're like us, we're chasing a revenue goal when we first started, and now all we do is chase profit goals, because that's what actually moves things forward for us in our lives. And as the owners, that's why we built a business, to provide incredible value and service to our community, and to be able to leverage that for our own personal growth. So I hope this helps. If you need help with this, you can always reach out. You can book a call with us at ceofinanceacademy.com/profit-call. Reach out on our website or shoot me a message. And I hope that if you're dealing with any of these feelings, just know you're not alone, and we're here to help. And there's plenty of people in this group who are happy to help as well. So we'll catch you guys on the next episode of Profit Cast.